Hello, everyone, and sorry for the delay there. This month's Connect with Remedy webinar series is using RSSO with Smart IT, Digital Workplace, and Midtier. We will be taking questions after the call. If you have any questions to ask during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A section. Right now, I'll turn the presentation over to Chandan Gad.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, my name is Chandan Gad. I am a Senior Technical Support Analyst working for BMC Support, and I take care of the Atrium, CMDB, and Remedy SSO issues. So today's webinar is about the using Remedy SSO with Smart IT, Digital Workplace, and Midtier. So the agenda for today's webinar is that we'll be doing an RSSO overview, and then we're going to talk about the integrations and troubleshooting, and towards the end we're going to have a Q&A session, as well as we have a slide for the references where we put links to the instructions or whatever that has been covered in this presentation. All right, so let's begin with the RSSO overview. So in this RSSO overview architecture, just covering the different components that are involved in the Remedy SSO integration. If you look at the top of this image, you see the WebAgent applications like the mobile device and the web browsers that are trying to connect to the Remedy applications like DWP, Midtier, Smart IT through load balancer. The agent applications you see at the bottom of the image on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side you see the SSO, which is Remedy SSO, and it's connected to the database. Unlike Atrium SSO, which was the previous product of Remedy SSO, which was not working on a database, but Remedy SSO works on a database. All right, so in this diagram, we're going to show you how the RSSO integration workflow happens. So this slide has been numerically represented, and then you have the legends on the right hand side, which is telling what is for each number. For example, number 1 is for the request that's coming from either from your mobile device or a web browser from a WebAgent application. So sorry, from browser that goes to a web app. And once the web application is it receives this request, it knows that there is a Remedy SSO agent on it, so it redirects to Remedy SSO server. And a Remedy SSO server does the authentication with the identity providers that are configured on it, and then it gives back the control back to web application. So web application at this point in time, it knows that the authentication has been done, but it has to grab the SSO token from Remedy SSO. So it makes a call back to Remedy SSO and grabs the SSO token. Once the web application gets a token, web app in the sense it's a Midtier, let's say, for example. So Midtier has to go to AR server for doing the authorization of the user. So which is when it passes the SSO token to AR server, and AR server goes back to Remedy SSO server again for the SSO validation. And once this validation is finished, the AR server goes ahead and does the authorization for the user. So this is how the workflow of the RSSO integration works when Remedy SSO is integrated with Remedy applications. So what are the different ways we can integrate Remedy applications with Remedy SSO? So we're going to cover Midtier, we're going to cover My IT and Service Broker in this presentation. So we're starting with Midtier. So when it comes to integration of Midtier, it's the RSSO agent files and some of the configuration files that needs to be edited so that it can be integrated. So first of all, you can do this integration of Remedy SSO with Midtier using the Remedy SSO installer or by the manual way of doing it. But sometimes we've seen that if Midtier's Tomcat was not stopped in a timely manner, then possibly the RSSO installer will end the installation without updating the files, which is when you will have to follow the manual way of integrating the applications, and that's gonna solve the problem of the RSSO integration. Right. So before even coming to the RSSO integration, I just want to briefly cover the realm configuration on the Remedy SSO side. So each application that is integrated with Remedy SSO has to go to a particular realm for authentication. So by default, we have asterisk as a realm that is shipped with asterisk wildcard sign realm that is shipped with the Remedy SSO, and it is mapped with the application domain of asterisk. Application domain is nothing but the names of the servers of the WebAgent applications like Midtier or Smart IT, My IT Service Broker. Right. So likewise, you can create multiple realms if you have to, but usually the work is done using the wildcard asterisk sign. Right. So that's about the realm. We'll quickly go through the RSSO agent files that are required on the Midtier. So copying of the RSSO agent files. So we have 3 jar files: the RSSO authenticator plugin all.jar, RSSO agent all.jar, json2.3.1.jar file. These files have to be copied from the RSSO installer and then copied into the webint lib directory of Midtier. And similarly, you have the RSSO log.cfg file that needs to be copied from RSSO installer and copied into webint classes directories of Midtier. Let's see which are the other files that needs to be copied over. Right. So yeah. So in the webint classes directory, this config.properties file, which is actually this is a file that comes with Midtier. It's not a Remedy SSO file. So this file has this configuration of authenticator. So there is a parameter in the config.properties file by the name AR_system.authenticator, and that is by default set to default authenticator, which is the Midtier's login.jsp login servlet authentication. But that needs to be changed to RSSO authenticator so that Midtier knows that it doesn't have to use its own login servlet, and it has to go to RSSO for the authentication purposes. Likewise, the web.xml file, which is shipped with every web application, it's stored in Midtier's web INF directory. The web.xml file, which is a startup file for the web application Midtier, needs to be told that there is a RSSO installed on this RSSO agents filter, and the filter mapping has to be enabled in web.xml. The filter name in the Midtier's case is RSSO filter. So as you can see on this slide, there is the RSSO filter which is com.bmc.rsso.agent.rsso filter, and then it has got a filter mapping, which basically tells that / and asterisk, which means any URL that will come from Remedy, from Midtier, will be protected by a WebAgent application, and it will be redirected to Remedy SSO. Okay, so RSSO agent.properties file. This is a file that is shipped by Remedy SSO installer. That needs to be copied into webint classes directory of Midtier. Now, this is a very important file where it tells which SSO server Midtier has to connect to. So it has 2 parameters. One is the SSO external URL, and the other one is SSO service URL. SSO external URL basically it uses that URL to redirect to Remedy SSO. So this should be your HTTPS URL of SSO. so that all the communication happen on a secured mode. And SSO service URL is basically an internal call that's made between the Midtier and the Remedy SSO, which can run on HTTP. But if HTTP is not a port option in your case, then you might as well use HTTPS without any problems. Right. So that's about the RSSO agent properties. Sorry, that's about the SSO external and the SSO service URL parameter. Coming to agent ID, which is also a part of the RSSO agent property, it's a very important parameter. Agent ID is the name of the agent for an application. Let's say Midtier. So you give a name to Midtier agent called agent ID, okay, Midtier, and then for likewise for my IT, smart IT service broker. So the purpose of agent ID is that, for a particular browser session, if there are multiple agent applications logged in using the same Remedy SSO user session, Remedy SSO knows which agents are currently logged in at a particular time. So that if a user logs out from Midtier, it doesn't terminate the session of the Remedy SSO. Instead, because the other applications are still logged into that same browser session. So agent ID basically tells, because there's actually a table called in Remedy SSO database called authenticated agents. That table is filled up with the currently authenticated agents table. So it maintains that table. So it looks for an agent ID for a particular user session, and only when the last agent ID is logged out from that browser session, that's when the Remedy SSO user is also terminated from the user session. So that's the RSSO agent properties for you. Yeah, so there's some more parameters. Okay, so RSSO agent properties also have one other important parameter is about the excluded URLs, which means that there are certain URLs which will not be under the SSO influence. So if you want to go to Midtier configuration tool, you don't have to go through Remedy SSO. That's when you put that Midtier config servlet into this excluded URL. Likewise, while I was working on one of the cases, I found that there are two types of the SOAP web services that are offered by Remedy. One is the public web service, and the other one is protected web services. The only difference is that in the protected web service needs to go through SSO authentication so that it can do the usual LDAP or the AR authentication, whereas in public that's not needed. So the public, so there's a difference in the URL patterns of the public and the protected web service, as I've highlighted here. So you say after WSDL you say public for public, and after WSDL you say protected for protected web service. So by default, when we ship Remedy SSO agent properties, we include the WSDL URL in the exception list so that it doesn't have to go through this the SSO for authentication. But if you are using the protected web service as well, which is when you would want to alter that URL from WSDL to WSDL/public, so that it does only the public web services for the RSSO exception list, and it does the RSSO authentication for the protected ones. Okay, so that was about the RSSO integration with Midtier. So we saw RSSO agent properties, config.properties, and web.xml, and copying of the RSSO agent jar files. So that's about the Midtier integration. Now we're going to do RSSO integration with AR server. So same thing, you have the jar files, the plugin jar files that you need to copy from RSSO installer to RSSO to AR server in the plugin server folder, and you also have to copy RSSO.cfg file in the AR server conf directory, and RSSO.cfg file has this SSO service URL parameter that needs to be that needs to be populated with the SSO URL. So the reason why we need this parameter is because once Midtier, once Midtier redirects to RSSO for authentication, and once the user is authenticated, it needs to be authorized. And a Remedy SSO cannot authorize the user; it can authenticate the user. So once the control goes back to AR server will first check the check the SSO validation with SSO, whether the user is really has the current active session and other stuff. And once that is validated, it will do the authorization by giving the group permissions that it has to. So the before authorization, it hits this SSO service URL for the SSO validation. That's the purpose of this, and it's in the rsso.config file under ARConf directory. Right, and definitely this is a Java plugin. It's going to be the RSSO. So it's arsys.area.rsso is the name of the plugin, and this plugin entry, like other plugin entries, needs to be there in the plugin server config.xml file under ARConf plugin server. Right, so that is about, so those are the different pointers for the RSSO integration for AR server and mid-tier. And now we're going to check how do we disable RSSO integration. So before even I start this, there is a concept in Remedy SSO by the name bypass URL. Now the Remedy bypass URL is not, you're not bypassing Remedy SSO. It's just a bypass URL to the primary authentication. Let's say if your primary authentication is SAML or Kerberos or LDAP or something, you just want to bypass that authentication and just want to do the AR server authentication. But using Remedy SSO login page, that's when you use that bypass Remedy SSO URLs. But this integration of the Remedy SSO is different than bypassing the Remedy SSO URL. So for doing the for disabling the Remedy SSO integration, all you have to do is go to mid-tier and make a change to the config.properties back to the default authenticator. Last time, while integrating, we changed it to our RSSO authenticator. We will change it to the default authenticator, and after that, we are also going to make disable the web.xml filter, which is RSSO filter and RSSO filter mapping. After we do this, you restart the mid-tier. You don't have to make any changes in the AR server, and that should be that should take care of the AR server, as that should take care of the of just the normal mid-tier authentication without having to go to Remedy SSO. Right. So now let's go to the RSSO integration of DWP and Smart IT. So like mid-tier integration, we also have the RSSO agent files here. There is a slight difference, like in MyIT. Prior to MyIT versions of 3.1, we used to use RSSO installer to integrate MyIT Smart IT with Remedy SSO. But after 3.1 version, we started giving the agent files right within the MyIT, and we also changed the location where these files will be copied to. So prior to mid-tier MyIT Smart IT version 3.1, the RSSO installer used to dump these files in WebInflib, where the jar files is to be copied of UX, and under the UX WebInf classes, the RSSO agent file was being copied. Right, but in the later versions, these files are being copied under the Tomcat directory of external conf. So in external conf, you see a lib directory where these jar files RSSO jar files are being copied to, and in the external conf directory, the RSSO agent properties files will be copied. Right. So web.xml, just like how we saw it in mid-tier. So web.xml that is shipped with DWP and Smart IT. You don't have to make any change to this to this file, because this file comes ready with the filter and the filter mappings for Remedy SSO. The only difference between the mid-tier and this, and in the mid-tier, the filter name was RSSO filter, but here the name is agent. So you see the filter for agent, and you see the filter mapping for agent. Right. So all you have to do is in Smart IT, in MyIT, is just enable the RSSO integration. You don't have to make any changes. So for which you have to go to RSSO agent properties, just populate the SSO external and the service URL. The parameter is this parameter has to be populated with the RSSO URL, and the agent ID. You just have to name the agent ID that you want to give. It's a unique identifier, just the way I explained in the mid-tier. this is the agent that will be recorded into the authenticated agents table of Remedy SSO when you authenticate to authenticate in a particular browser session. Besides RSSO agent properties, you have to enable this RSSO integration in the Smart IT database. There is a table called tenant. And in this table tenant, there is out of the box. There's one record that's shipped, and there is a field by the name SAML_authentication. So if this value is set to 0, which means it's not gonna do the RSSO authentication, it's gonna do the normal MyIT authentication. So you have to update this this value to 1. I have given the update SQL query in this slide that you can use. There is also a jar file that does this work, just in case if you don't have a direct access to the database. But then I have seen in a couple of versions that the jar file had some issues in updating, so I recommend that you use the update query. Only in case of the Oracle, after firing the update query, just don't forget to fire the commit statement, or else the changes will not be committed to the database table. And after you do this, you restart the DWP Smart IT Tomcat service, and that should take care of the integration. You will see the RSSO authentication happening using the login page or any other authentication that you've set up. Yeah, so disabling is also same. I mean, disabling the RSSO integration for DWP and Smart IT, you just have to go to the tenant table and set the SAML authentication value back to 0. The update query remains the same, only the value of the SAML_authentication field changes. And after you do that, restart the Tomcat service, and it will disable the RSSO integration with DWP or Smart IT. Yeah. So with this, we have finished the RSSO integration with Midtier, AR Server, Smart IT, MyIT, and now we're going to talk about the RSSO integration for DWP Catalog, which is also called the Service Broker. So, yeah, the first is copying of the RSSO agent files. On this MyIT Service Broker machine, there is this RSSO folder which is by default hidden. It's under your install location, and then under for service SB folder, and then inside the SB folder, this folder of RSSO is hidden. So you have to unhide it first, and once you unhide it, then you can copy the installation files from the RSSO installer. So talking about the RSSO agent OS GIJAR, RSSO agent properties, RSSO config, JSON, and RSSO area plugin. So the target locations are like install location, deploy, conf, plugin server. Yeah. So this service broker comes with its own AR server, unlike how you see the AR server that's an external AR server when you do with the Midtier and MyIT. But this, in case of Service Broker, the AR server is embedded inside the Service Broker installer, which is why under the install location of Service Broker, you also see the plugin server folder. So JSON and the RSSO area plugin all.jar is actually the RSSO plugin file that should be stored on the AR server. But because the AR server is within the Service Broker, you use this the same install location plugin server folder to copy the files. Right. So this is something. Right, so editing of this configuration file. So RSSO agent properties, it has this SSO service and the external URL which you have to populate with the RSSO server URL. You've seen it in the previous slides, and the editing of the plugin server config files. Now here, because this AR server is not supposed to do any other thing but just the Service Broker integration and the Service Broker authorization with the Remedy SSO, we're gonna comment out the Atrium SSO and the Pentaho plugins which are there in this plugin server config.xml file. And in this file, we're going to add the same arss.area.rsso plugin entry. And we also going to give the RSSO config reference in this plugin. These are the same entries that you would otherwise do for the AR server integration also. We saw that in the previous slide. Right, and case of the AR.conf directory, sorry, AR.conf file, you will comment out the server plugin aliases for Pentaho, AR Migrate, and AR Report Engine, because we don't want this AR server to run this plugins. Okay, and we are also gonna, unlike in the AR server authentication that we AR server integration that we saw, that there is a RSSO.cfg file and we have to put the SSO service URL, we have to populate the SSO service URL there with the Remedy SSO server. But in case of DWP service broker, you have to comment out the SSO service URL. It doesn't use the parameter from this file, but it instead uses the there is a SSO service URL parameter in RSSO admin console under general and advanced section. It uses that parameter, so you have to populate that parameter with SSO service URL so that this AR server can authorize the users. All right, so there is this tenant concept in service broker. So the tenant that you use for the service broker, that has to be matched in the Remedy SSO. So what you do is you create a tenant by your domain name in a file called set-script-variables.sh in service broker. It has to be saved under the SBENV folder, and you have to put this. You have to export the variable name tenant_name is equal to the tenant name, and this very same tenant name has to be configured in Remedy SSO realm configuration, so that Remedy SSO know that it has to deal with this tenant when service broker tries to authenticate the user. Right, and for the default Remedy user authentication, where the user is available on the user form, you don't have to enable the cross-reference blank server, and then you can disable the authentication chaining so that Remedy SSO can authenticate the user or the default user from the Remedy users form. But if you have to get the users, and if you are from your ITSM into the user form, then there is a utility to bring those users and the groups in this user form, and these users might as well be going and making an area call to your LDAP server, which means first off you have to prepare this Remedy this service brokers AR server in order to get these users down here. So you have to set the cross-reference blank password to yes, and then you have to also set the authentication chaining to ARS area, and the RPC to 390.695, so that you can it can do the external authentication, and the utility is going to import the users and the groups into the service broker AR server. Okay. In one of the slides of the service broker, we saw that a tenant name has to be configured with the service broker and the Remedy SSO, so that SSO knows that this is an authentication that's needed for service broker. But when we include a tenant, what happens is the user names are appended with @ and the domain name, which is not the case that you want to use for Midtier, because Midtier doesn't recognize the users like that in the Midtier AR, in the normal Midtier and AR server integration. So in which case you have to ignore the tenant, which means that you have to configure Midtier with ignore tenant is equal to true a value, and this value has to be put into a file named RSSO authenticator.properties. And for Midtier to know that this file is there in place, there is a parameter in config.parameters that config.properties file that need to add it is the AR system.authenticator.config.file is equal to RSSO authenticator property. So this file and this configuration tells Midtier, tells RSSO that it has to ignore the tenant when it's doing authentication with Midtier. And similarly for DWP, the location is different. It is in the external conf directory of Tomcat, and the value is same. Ignore tenant is equal to true, but then the file name is different. The file name is sso-stk.properties. So that was an RSSO integration with service broker. Now we covered RSSO integration with Midtier, AR servers, Smart IT, My IT, and service broker, so which is the DWP catalog. Now we're going to take a look at how the WebAgent logout mechanism works. As I said, that there is this authenticated agents table, and once the user starts authenticating, to Midtier, and then they open another tab in the browser, logs into, let's say, My IT and then Smart IT. Then, so the Remedy SSO knows that there are 3 agents actually communicating, which are currently authenticated to its application. So it knows when it has to log out. When you do a logout from Midtier, it is not going to terminate the session from Remedy SSO, because the other 2 applications are still using Remedy SSO, and only there's a parameter in Remedy SSO called after logout URL. That parameter can be set with an URL which maybe it can be something to do with the company's home page or intranet page or something like that. That URL will come into picture only when all the applications have logged out from the current browser session. In case of Midtier, we have a logout URL. It's called logout.jsp that can be used. So if you log out from Midtier, it can bring up the the logout.jsp, and then it can have a URL to go back to Midtier and do the authentication again. In case of DWP and DWP catalog, we don't have a logout URL. It's a REST API that's called a call that's made. So we have a ATSSO logout.html page, and then basically, when you log out from here, you get a plain by default you get a plain Remedy SSO logout page. Right. The one thing that we have noticed that if Midtier, if service broker has been configured with My IT, then you must make sure that My IT and service broker has the same agent ID. It's because when you log into My IT, it also makes an internal call to service broker, although the user might not have physically logged into service broker in a browser session, which makes Remedy SSO to store 2 agent ID entries in authenticated agents, one for My IT and the other one for service broker. So if you log out from My IT, then ideally both the entries from the authenticated agents table should be removed, but if you have an agent ID that is named differently for service broker and My IT, then in that case you will notice that only one entry from the authenticated agents table have been removed and the other one is still removed. Hence the RSSO user session is still not terminated, and after logout URL is not gonna will not be executed. So for My IT and service broker, the agent ID has to be same. From 1805 onwards, Smart IT has to be installed on a different Tomcat instance than My IT, which means that Smart IT is going to have a different agent ID with as compared to My IT, which is perfect. It has to be a differently named, or else if you log out from My IT, it will also log you out from Smart IT. Okay, this is one of the error message which is very common in Remedy SSO integration, and the other one is actually an error has occurred. Please contact the system administrator. So for the other error message, I would suggest that you do all the checkpoints of the integration that I have gone through for, let's say, if you're doing for AR and mid-tier, so I've covered those slides for you. If you check for those pointers, then the issue will be resolved. Similarly for My IT, Smart IT and all. But if you get an AR authentication fail, AR error 623, that may not necessarily be the RSSO integration issue. It could be sometimes be, you know, very well be the authentication side issue. So so how to figure out what and what are the things that we need to check when we see this the error message. So I have made a few pointers that we have used in the past to resolve many tickets for this with this same error message. So first, I would check if a user session has been created in Remedy SSO. So when I get this error message, let's say I'm trying to log into Midtier and I got this error message. So I will first go to Remedy SSO admin console. I will go to the sessions list and see if the user session has been created. If that has been created, which means Remedy SSO has done its job, but that there's some problem at the agent side. So in that case, you will have to first come to the WebAgent, and I will first suggest, just ping the RSSO server or bring up the RSSO homepage or something like that in a browser. If you remember in the RSSO integration slide, I think the second slide of this presentation, I said that after RSSO authenticates the user, it gives the control back to web application, let's say Midtier in this case, but Midtier again has to make a call to SSO to grab the token and validate it. So that is done. That can be done only if you are able to ping the RSSO server, or if you're able to bring the RSSO homepage on the Midtier server. So which is why I put this pointer there. If you're not able to access RSSO homepage from Midtier box, then this integration will not work, and you probably will get ARERR 623 error message. Right. If you are able to get through that, then just try to find out if Midtier is able to connect to the AR server. The best thing to do in this case is just go to Midtier configuration tool, remove the AR server, and add it back. If you are able to add it back, which means you are able to make a connection to AR server, and then that we can rule this option out. Because in some cases we have seen that AR server, maybe the Midtier admin password has been changed, or AR server is not able to be you can't reach a AR server for some reason. That's when we also will see the same error message. All right. Then RSSO config file on the AR server is configure the correct RSSO server. Yeah. So let's say now you are able to get up to the AR server from Midtier, but then in AR server is not able to, let's say, connect to the RSSO server. That's when you would try to go to the RSSO config file and find out if the proper RSSO server has been configured in this RSSO config file. You are able to ping this server. You're able to telnet the port. You're able to maybe open this RSSO homepage on the AR server and see if that works. RSSO plugin, just check whether the RSSO plugin has been started on the AR server. So you'll go to ARERRs and find out if there was any error starting the RSSO plugin, or you would go to the task manager and find out if there is an entry for RSSO plugin. So that should give you a clear idea whether AR server has the RSSO plugin running. Then likewise for My IT and the AR server Midtier, just ensure that it has been integrated with Remedy SSO. Sometimes I've seen that the installers are run and only on Midtier but not on AR server. You also need an integration on the AR server to authenticate to authorize the user. And as the last pointer on this slide, I would say the AR server should not be running in an admin mode. If it runs in an admin mode, then it is not going to do an authorization from the AR server perspective. So change it to the non-admin mode, save the file, and restart the AR server service, after which that issue should be gone. So these are the few pointers that we usually see. One of the pointers I think I missed out on this is the RSSO agent.properties file on the WebAgent. You must ensure that you are able to you have put the correct SSO service URL and the correct SSO external URL, and you are able to open those URLs in the Midtier box and In case if you put a load balancer name of the RSSO there, just make sure that you are able to connect to the load balancer as well. In case sometimes I've seen that the issues are not with the backend servers on the but only on the load balancer. That's when you may want to work with the load balancer team to see why the connection or why the request is not being forwarded to the backend servers. That's pretty much troubleshooting to be done for the authentication fail ARERR server 623 error message. So this slide covers the different links that I have used to prepare this presentation. So it covers the working with the logs and manual integration of a Remedy SSO with Remedy applications, configuring Remedy SSO and DWP Catalog, and also with there's a webinar that was done for integrating Remedy SSO with DWP Catalog, which is your service broker. So I've put that link as well, so you can use this link for the information. So just to summarize, in today's presentation, we've covered the RSSO integration with the Remedy applications, including the service broker. We basically were from the troubleshooting perspective, you will either get an error has occurred, please contact the system administrator, or ARERR 623. These are the two most common error messages in the integration perspective, and these are the pointers. These are the different integration checkpoints which are there, which I've covered in the slides, like for the AR server, for Midtier, Smart IT, My IT, like disabling RSSO, enabling RSSO, checking the RSSO agent jar files, and checking the configuration files, whether the parameters have been configured properly and stuff like that. So that's what has been covered in today's webinar. Thanks for joining me on this webinar. So I will quickly hand over this the control to my colleague Greg. Greg.
Great. Thank you, Chandan. I just wanted to move on to our Q&A session.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi. I want just clarification regarding what Chandan said about being expected now, the integration with the DWP after the MIT version 3.1. Now we have to do the integration with RSSO only manually. How come before it was integrated within the installer, and now the only way to do it manually? Is it because of some major changes in the DWP? Thank you.
It's actually not an integration. So integration is shipped with My IT from 3.1 onwards. You don't have to copy the jar files, nothing. You just have to enable it. So you have to set the SAML authentication field to true for doing the RSSO integration, and just put the SSO configuration URL. Yes, please.
Hi, Chandan. Thank you for the presentation. I have a quick question. If, for example, RSSO is working fine, people are getting authenticated, but all of a sudden we will get this error, an error occurred, please contact system administrator, the error which you explained. So there is no change in our config file from AR server side or Midtier side. But
right.
Once in a while, this is the common error we are getting.
Okay. So may I ask you which authentication you've configured in RSSO?
SAML authentication.
SAML, and is it so is it what do you call it? Is it a seamless that user don't have to enter the authentication?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So right. So I have seen that in some cases that once the user is authenticated, for some users randomly you will get this error message. So if you go to the Tomcat's Catalina log on Remedy SSO, you would see that the response header size was not big enough to accommodate all the groups that were returned by the AD for that particular user. okay, which is when it will break, and you will see usually the 401 error message in the Tomcat Catalina log, but you will see the N error has occurred. Please contact system administrator in the browser. In that case, you have to go to the Tomcat server XML and make changes to the max HTTP header size, and you should not. So this is a random error actually. It works fine for some users, but not for the other users.
Okay, yeah, that's the same scenario. It's not for all users, some users. And I think so this is same thing.
Yeah,
sometimes few users are getting like the header size is too long. We can see the browser address bar shows so many characters and it is too long, so it will not pass back to the web app. It will stay in there. Maybe that header size.
Yeah, it's actually not in the URL, but you will see that error message in the Catalina. It will be like 401 bad request. That error message would appear there. So if you go to server XML, and in the server XML you have a connector, like if you're using HTTPS, I'm sure you do. So you have to modify the server XML's connector for HTTPS and add a parameter there called max HTTP header size. And if the parameter is already there, then you just increase maybe from 32,000 to maybe 64,000 and see how that works.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And
a restart of Tomcat service will be needed. Yeah.
Okay. And in your presentation, you showed some plugins to be commented out additionally. So Pendaho plugin, I didn't follow that. Is it for why we should comment out those plugins from ARERR?
That's only for the AR server that is shipped with Service Broker, not with the regular AR server.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. That's all. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Okay, at this time, we'll move to wrap up this week's session. Wanted to cover some of the self-help and contacting BMC. There is a Remedy Discovery YouTube channel that you can find the recordings at, as well as how-to videos are also posted there. The Connect with Remedy schedule is available on Communities. This is where new upcoming events and past events are listed, as well as the knowledge base is available 24/7 via this support URL. As always, technical support can be contacted via the web, phone, and email, as well as these social media channels. At this time, I wanted to thank you for attending our session this month, and thank you to Chandan and all the panelists for helping out. That wraps up this month. Thank you.